So what comes to mind when you think about psychological disorders? Maybe anxiety, maybe depression, bipolar disorder, but how often do you think about personality disorders, or do you even know that personality disorders are a thing? A lot of people don't. But in an article written by Dr. Deva Segal for WebMD, research done in 2021 has shown that about 10% of Americans have a personality disorder. And so if you think about it, this is a visual of what that means. I will better figure out how to present this on Monday. But so 10% of a population is 1 in 10. So 1 out of every 10 people around that has a personality disorder. It's a pretty big number for being something that people don't really know much about. But what in the heck is a personality disorder? So personality disorders fit under one of 3 clusters. There's cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C. And as stated in the 3rd edition accredited textbook, Essentials of Understanding Abnormal Behavior, published in 2017, a personality disorder is categorized by enduring personality patterns that are extreme and highly deviate from cultural expectations, inflexible, evident in early adulthood or late childhood, stable, and associated with distress and impairment. So as I move on, remember to refrain from self-diagnosing. Some personality disorders may contain traits that you think you have, but there's a lot more to it than I'm getting at. So just keep that in mind. But let's get to it. So the first of the 3 clusters is cluster A, and this is categorized by odd, bizarre, or eccentric personality patterns. Within this, we have paranoid personality disorder, schizoid personality disorder, and schizotypal personality disorder. And then secondly, we have cluster B, which is dramatic and erratic personality patterns. These ones are probably most likely ones you guys have heard of, if anything. Borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. And then lastly, cluster C is anxious and fearful. This is the avoidant personality disorder, dependent personality disorder, and then obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is different from OCD. It has some of the same qualities, but it's a lot more overall showing. But while I could bore you with a description of all these personality disorders and call it a day, I'd rather show you examples so that you can better put it into perspective. And no, I'm not holding 10 people hostage here because there's 10 different personality traits, but that would be pretty interesting if I was. There are actually many common characters in TV shows and films that fit criteria for personality disorders. And when I present this, I'm planning on making it so you can't see all this other side right now. So just a disclaimer. But first off, let's start with a well-known supervillain, the Joker. Obviously, we all know that the Joker is quite the character. But while the Joker is seen in different movies, let's focus on his behavior in The Dark Knight, directed by Christopher Nolan in 2008. Without spoiling too much, the Joker is quite notorious for his destructive and almost flamboyant behavior. He conducts himself in a way that is not only inappropriate, but also completely ignores the well-being of those around him. He is not shown to have close relationships, and if he does, they aren't that deep, or they don't last very long, and they're not very stable. Sorry, I lost my, okay. While he might just sound like a straight up psycho, the important piece of this is that there's actually psychologically something going on there. Antisocial personality disorder is a personality disorder that falls under cluster B of our list, and the Joker hits every single criteria for it. Those dramatic and erratic behaviors are present in almost every single move that the Joker makes. And because people diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder seem charming on the surface, as described by Psychology Today's review of antisocial personality disorder, the diagnosis can be frequently overlooked. Another example of a character that has this is Joe from You. And if you see the way that he manipulates people and that type of thing and doesn't have any remorse, that's exactly what antisocial personality disorder entails. So now I'm going to move on to a contender that everybody probably is familiar with, but you wouldn't really expect, Michael Scott. And I know you're probably like, what the heck, like Michael Scott is a little bit nuts in the head, but does he really have a personality disorder? But yes, we're going to make the 2005 sitcom The Office psychological. Sure, you may have thought his behavioral patterns are quite abnormal before, but did you know that he fits every single criteria to be diagnosed with histrionic personality disorder? Let's talk about his behavior. So he makes inappropriate jokes. He can't stand not being the center of attention. He goes to every extreme to be the center of attention. And for example, if you guys have seen The Office, the one episode where he's standing on top of the building, staging his suicide just to try to teach them a lesson about safety. But when you see his character, you know that it's actually just because he's trying to get attention. He wasn't getting attention before this. And it basically, people with histrionic personality disorder will go to all ends to not face rejection. So, in a Men's Health article that was published in 2020, licensed marriage and family therapist Katie Morton actually psychoanalyzed Michael Scott. And she stated that at first she thought that he could qualify for narcissistic personality disorder, which is characterized by obviously an overblown ego, no regard for others, that type of thing. But she actually came to the conclusion that he fit more criteria for histrionic personality disorder. Despite the general public's limited knowledge, despite the general public's limited knowledge on the topic, there are actually many films and shows out there today that show and display characters with a personality disorder. And if it's just as fascinating to you as it is to me, it's honestly a lot more interesting to see this in film. But don't limit your knowledge here. I challenge you to look up personality disorders exuded in films, as there's quite a few characters that you know and love that could be along these lists. But while watching these disorders on film is interesting, it's important to understand that they are actually real things and people that you might know could have one. And although it's not crippling, it is a big part of people's lives. And I mean, hey, if you guys know anything about what's going on with the whole Johnny Depp and Amber Heard situation, she was actually diagnosed with 2 personality disorders, histrionic and borderline. And so, I mean, that right there is an opportunity to learn more. So I challenge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Your subject's really interesting. I love it. And I like that it's connected to your study as well as psychology.
Thank you.
It's a very nice, well done.
It was very well organized.
Thank you.
It was interesting. I never really thought about a lot of that stuff before.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next we have Christine.